USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. An in-depth look at this week's top college hockey matchup and a preview of the other big games.
Welcome to the USCHO Game of the Week podcast for Thursday, February 24th, 2022. This podcast is brought to you by DCU Digital Federal Credit Union. What will DCU mean to you? Find out today by visiting dcu.org. Membership required. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. And Jim, a great showdown this weekend in the Big Ten as number 2 Michigan travels to number 9 Notre Dame.
And joining us now to talk about Michigan Notre Dame, it is the radio voice of Irish hockey. That's Darin Pritchett. Darin, great to have you with us. This is a Notre Dame team that has become more fun to watch as the season has gone on. What do you like about the way this team is playing right now?
Well, guys, first of all, good to talk to you again. Always a pleasure to talk to you guys. I'll tell you what, Notre Dame hockey this year has surprised me. I'm really, as the season has gone on, I can't believe how well this team has been offensively. I thought we'd average maybe 3 goals a game. We lost our leading goal scorer, Alex Steves, to the Maple Leafs organization after last year. And there's just been a bunch of guys who have taken up different levels to their game. Max Ellis, Ryder Ralston, the son of former NHLer Brian Ralston. There's just a long list of guys that have really stepped forward. So we don't have a number 1 line. We have 3 lines that are really producing and a 4th line that's now been chipping in a little bit more. So, guys, I thought we'd be pretty good defensively. I thought the goaltending would be a strength, but offensively, they have gone well beyond what I thought they would do at the start of the year.
Well, and particularly of late, 11-3-0 in the last 14, 7-2-0 in their last 9. It does feel like things are clicking. Can you maybe discern some of the bumps that were in the road early to where this team is right now? Is it just as simple as the pucks are going in the net, goal scoring is happening, or is there a little bit more to this Notre Dame game?
Guys, like any hockey team, Coach Jackson and the staff, they were moving around a lot of parts trying to find the right combination. With Steve's gone, who was going to play with Landon and Graham Slaggert, and they finally settled on Trevor Janicki. And then once Max Ellis got going, then they had to find the right center to go with him. And then, guys, really what turned the corner was in December, Jake Pavanka came back earlier than expected. He tore his Achilles working out in his father's home country, Michael Pavanka, during the offseason, had Achilles surgery in September. He played a game in December, which is shocking. I guess the hockey boot helps solidify that Achilles a little bit, that maybe a hockey player can come back sooner. I'm not a doctor. I'm just going by what I'm told. But he came back, and that's added a really extra dimension to the center position. He is terrific in the faceoff circle, a really good two-way player. So just as the season has gone on, just different guys have taken on different roles. One week it'll be Solak Bakic coming out of nowhere to do something. Last weekend it was Justin Janicki and Jack Adams on the 4th line and Hunter Strand. So it's just that classic. Every week somebody else does something a little bit different to help this hockey team win.
I want to get into some individual players, and I'll start with the guy that you just mentioned, Max Ellis. This is a kid who, had never scored more than 5 goals in a year. 16 points was his career high as a sophomore. He's played 31 games, already has 16 goals and 28 total points. I know I have something that lists him at 5'9", 151, which I can't believe. He seems a little bit bigger than that now. But this is a kid that's playing a bigger game than maybe his size even is. What do you like about Max Ellis?
Boy, as a freshman, he was sitting on the sideline watching. And you guys know the great thing about college hockey. When you play college hockey, you get to take advantage of strength and conditioning programs. And Notre Dame has a great one with Tony Walensky. And he has bought into that. He is a terrific skater. And you just mentioned his size. And he's the type of kid that's not afraid to get his nose dirty, even though he knows he's going to get banged around. He scored a hat trick in the first series against Michigan in Ann Arbor and had the game winner. He was standing in front of the goal, redirected a shot, passed the goaltender for the game winner. So he's got really good hands. He has excellent speed, great vision on the ice. But I just think he's the type of kid, despite his size, not afraid to get down there amongst the big boys. And he does get knocked around quite a bit. He's a little banged up right now, but he's playing through, and I give him a lot of credit for that.
Another guy, and we were talking about him off the air before we started, Spencer Stasny on defense. Like another guy, not that big, 5'11", but he's good defensively and now putting up some points, 6 goals, 24 total points in 31 games. His game seems to have taken a step forward in his senior year.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Jim, he was a guy that came on my radio show last spring, and I think we all just thought he was going to go play for the Predators who drafted him. And he said, I love college hockey. I came to Notre Dame to get a degree and play 4 years. And he was coming back. And he was good enough to go pro. But he has been one of the best defensemen in the country. I know he's not going to get probably All-American status. There's some big names out there that are going to get that recognition. But he's got 18 points in his last 18 games. Had a goal last week and against Michigan State. That was very important to help the Irish sweep Michigan State. The thing that always stood out about him when I saw him as a freshman, he is a tremendous skater, and his upper body strength, I mean, he is built like a rock, and guys just kind of bounce off of him. So he's got already the physical stature to play at a high level. He has great speed, great skater, and now he has had a little more offense to his repertoire. He had a highlight reel goal in the Big Ten championship a couple of years ago against Penn State that shocked everybody. And now we're seeing him go coast to coast. He is not afraid to go one-on-one with someone. And just to give you a little idea, his hockey IQ, we were playing Penn State in Happy Valley. In overtime, there was just 8.9 seconds left in the 3-on-3 overtime, and the draw was in our defensive zone. Jake Pavanka won the draw. Stasny got it, raced up the ice with Ellis on a 2-on-1. And again, they only had 8.9 seconds to work with. He got down there quick enough where he didn't try to score. He shot it off the pad of the goaltender, and the puck went directly to Ellis, who banged it in with 1/10 of a second on the clock to win the game. That just gives you an idea. He's very unselfish. He understands the game so well, and his offensive skill is really blossoming right now.
Coach Jeff Jackson has shared time in net between Ryan Bischel and Matthew Galajda. Nearly identical statistics, both having a lot of success. What's it been like to see this 1-2 tandem, or 1A, 1B, or however you want to divide it up?
Ed, I'll tell you what, this is my 13th year, and normally there's always one guy that takes control of the Notre Dame goalie job and runs with it. And this is that rare occasion where really no one has separated himself from the other guy. Galajda kind of started the year. I think we all assumed he was going to be the guy, the All-American coming in from Cornell. And he got off to a good start. Then he missed the Michigan series. He wasn't, quote unquote, available. And Bischel came in and played lights out. And ever since then, it's like one guy has 3 or 4 starts and gets on a roll. Then there's kind of that one hiccup. The other guy comes in and then he takes charge for 3 or 4 games. Galajda gave up 3 goals on 5 shots to start the Minnesota series. So then Bischel starts the next 4. Then he gives up 3 goals on 5 shots against Wisconsin. Then Galajda has started the next 4, and he's been tremendous. So it really is at 1A and 1B. I think the coaching staff believes in both guys. I think Bischel's come a long way in rebound control. That has really taken his game to the next level. But I think at the start of the year, we just assumed, Galajda is going to be the guy. Here's your new number 1. And maybe it's trending that way. But I remember Jeff saying, Ed, earlier this year, if I get into a best-of-3 first-round Big Ten series and I go to Game 3, I'm not going to be afraid to play the other goaltender. I'm going to play that rested guy, which could give me advantage in that Game 3.
That's certainly a luxury a lot of teams don't have. Something else, we were talking about it on our Monday podcast, a penalty kill that's chugging away at 91.5%. What's so stifling about the PK for Notre Dame?
Well, I'm kind of a hockey dummy when it comes to X's and O's, but I know Paul Pooley, in charge of the special team, just said they looked at some film in the NHL. I think it was the Carolina Hurricanes penalty kill. They saw how they did some things around the net. They tweaked their penalty kill more to be like the Hurricanes. And they've got a lot of good speed on the penalty kill and just a good combination of grinders, high hockey IQ guys, and they've just performed very well. Now, Michigan State scored twice on them on tough angle shots where a goalie had to go post to post, and unfortunately those 2 went in. But yeah, this has been really surprising to see how consistent the penalty kill has been this year. And it's really good offensive players that are out there helping out. Max Ellis is out there a lot. Landon Slaggert, Graham Slaggert, and defensemen like Stasny and Lieberman, who moved the puck so well. They're really good out there on the penalty kill. And I think, boy, guys, I hope I'm not wrong here. I think we've now given up 10 power play goals this year. We've scored 6 shorthanded goals. So -4, I think that's pretty good on the penalty kill so far this year.
With a record of 23-9, you might expect Notre Dame to be higher in the Big Ten standings and higher in the pairwise. As we record this, they're at number 11 in the pairwise, but a combination of overtime games and also a couple of non-league losses to Atlantic hockey teams have impacted that. Does Jeff Jackson, does Notre Dame have an awareness of what they need to be doing pairwise and also to try to maybe cement third place in the Big Ten?
Yeah, those Atlantic hockey guys have made the Irish a little stressed out here coming down the stretch in the pairwise. You know, Jeff doesn't really ever directly address it. When asked about the postseason, he'll just say, I'm not even really looking at the Big Ten standings. I'm just more focused on trying to get my team to the next level. So when we get to the postseason, we can have success. So I know they're fully aware of where they stand right now. And I think a split this weekend puts them in, I would think, pretty good shape. But, you know, the computers, I guess I'm guessing, and I shouldn't do that. But, yeah, they're aware. I think they feel good where the team is trending right now. And for a team, we're pretty banged up right now. They've really used their depth to their advantage to keep afloat in this thing. So, yeah, I think they feel good where they are right now. But, boy, one slip up in the Big Ten tournament, you lose the first round to one of those 3 teams that are well down the line in the pairwise. I think you guys know as well as I do, that can really change things in a second. So you just can't afford a hiccup this time of the year. 11 feels uncomfortable. I don't know what you guys think. I've always felt going into the conference tournaments and heading toward the championship round, if you're in 12, you're kind of okay, but 13 is a little nerve-wracking. I don't know, this year with all the balance in college hockey, I really want to make sure if I'm the Irish, I want to be in the top 11 because I think there's some craziness coming in the next couple of weeks.
I totally 100% agree with what you just said right there. And I do all the math and I think you've nailed it spot on. Darin, before we let you go, let's get into the series that's ahead, and it's Michigan, and this is the game of the week. But what do you see from this Michigan team? You know, Notre Dame able to get a couple of wins on the road this year against Michigan, but what does it take to really beat a team with the offensive talent, some of those blue liners that can really move the puck, and a team that doesn't give up a lot of goals?
Jim, what do they have, like 28 first-round picks? I've kind of lost track at this point. It's unbelievable, the talent. I mean, we were behind in both games at Michigan by 2 goals. And to our credit, we stayed in our structure. We didn't panic. We didn't try to do too much, because if that happens, they're going to beat us 9-1. I mean, we can't leave our game. We can't, outgun them. They just have so much offensive depth. The one thing about our hockey team, we're really fortunate. We have forwards that buy into Jeff's system. It's a puck possession game, but when we lose control of the puck, they get their tails back. They back check. They help the defenseman. We have really veteran centers. So I think that combination helps us. We've got centers like Cam Burke and Jake Pavanka, Graham Slaggert, and even the freshman Hunter Strand, who Jeff Jackson calls a future left-handed Jake Evans, which I think is a heck of a compliment. We've got centers that are willing to play on both ends of the ice. We're really good in the face-off circle. So to me, we've got a lot of talent. They've got a lot of first-round talent, and we just have to stick with our game. It's worked very well against them earlier this year. Got to stay out of the penalty box because, man, they can just put you away on the power play. And I think we gave up 1 the first time. So I don't want to be overly simplistic, but we just got to stick with our game. If we try to run and gun with them, it's not going to end very well. We got to slow down their speed at center ice, just like they have to slow down our speed. So I'm looking forward to it. I've got full confidence in our goaltending. I think our defense is so much more physical than last year. Adam Karashek has been a rock star here coming from UConn. He has added so much to this team. Guys, he's a captain as a grad transfer, and I just can't believe that happens very often. He's physical, and he moves the puck well. And he and Plazinski and Boltman have just had a lot more physical nature. And I think that's the way to maybe get Michigan off their game. They got a lot of skill. They want to skate around and make plays, knock them around a little bit like they're in a pinball machine, stay with the structure, and maybe some good things will happen this weekend. But as I told you before we went on the air, I mean, how strange this series. The road team has won 10 consecutive games. We've won 6 in a row at Yost. I can't imagine any team's ever done that. If they have, I think the list is very, very short.
Well, it should be a fantastic 2-game series yet again between these two teams in the Big Ten, and so much on the line for both Michigan and Notre Dame. Darin Pritchett, the radio voice of Irish hockey. We love catching up with you. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you. You do a great job in your broadcast. So thanks for your time. Enjoy the weekend. This should be a fun weekend of hockey out in hockey country in Indiana.
Ed and Jim, it's always a pleasure to talk to you guys, and thanks for what you do to make college hockey as popular as it is. I know we're a small faction, but the fan bases are so loyal and dedicated. So thanks for keeping college hockey conversation alive. And for me, nothing better than Notre Dame, Michigan. Notre Dame, BC is 1B. We've met them in the national semifinals twice. It's never dull. So I can't wait to get started at the Compton this weekend. So good to catch up with you, and call anytime.
More of the Game of the Week podcast coming up. This podcast is sponsored by DCU, Digital Federal Credit Union. Visit dcu.org.
This is the USCHO Game of the Week podcast from US College Hockey Online.
Know how people say life happens? Well, for me, life was happening, and I needed a new truck. I didn't have time to shop around for a good loan, so I got one from the dealer, higher interest and all. Month after month, those payments were squeezing me. So I went to DCU. They refinanced my loan and helped lower my rate, which lowered my payments. These days, I have more money in my pocket for whatever life throws at me. What will DCU mean to you? Insured by NCUA. Membership required. Visit dcu.org.
We're back with a Game of the Week podcast. Jim, number 2, Michigan, at number 9, Notre Dame. They're both coming in on a high note. Michigan sweeping Ohio State, and Michigan State getting swept by Notre Dame. Earlier in the season, as Darin mentioned, 10 in a row won by the road team. Notre Dame swept at Yost 3-2 and 5-4, both in overtime back in November. What a great matchup this is proving to be.
That's a crazy stat to me, that these two teams have played 10 straight games and nobody has won at home. Because I tend to think of both of these buildings as pretty tough home buildings to play in. I think that when you get Compton Family Ice Arena going, that crowd is unbelievable. And obviously we know what Yost is. I mean, that's a building that's very hard, to sustain as a road team if you're not playing well. And somehow, Notre Dame came back in both games earlier this year. And right now, I feel like Notre Dame might be playing their best hockey of the year. 7-2-0 in the last 9. That's a nice, healthy record. But I also look at Michigan. I feel like sometimes they have created a wonderful chip on their shoulder with all their first-round draft picks. I think Darin referred to it as 28. It's a little less than that, but it's still ridiculously high. You wouldn't think that they could even develop any sort of a chip, but I think of some of the adversity they've gone through this year, injuries, losing guys to the Olympics, the controversy that's gone on a little bit with the GLI and some other things that has surrounded this program. I think that the players in the locker room are starting to play for their coaching staff. And when you do that, the upside, especially when you have the talent that is doing so, the upside can be miraculous if that's not overstating things too much. I think that this Michigan team is playing well, but listen, I don't put anything past a Jeff Jackson coach team. He can get his team up to play in any environment, anytime. And maybe, sure, home teams haven't done well of late, but if Notre Dame were to sweep this series, it would not shock me. That's how well they're playing right now. They just have to slow this team down, stay out of the box, and just have their 91.5% penalty kill be a 91.5% penalty kill. You do that on the weekend, maybe you give up one power play goal. That's not bad.
Yeah, and you mentioned miraculous. That is the thing. The elite level players that Michigan has, somebody can do something amazing. We think about Luke Hughes last weekend just undressing Ohio State on that end-to-end goal. And Well, who else is there? You got 6 other first-round draft picks on that team. Anybody can step up and make an amazing play. But I think it's also going to come down to whichever goaltender, or maybe both of them, get a shot in net. Matthew Galida and Ryan Bischel have been superb. High 920s, like 927, both of them, just barely over 2 goals against. They're going to need to step up and be big this weekend too.
Yeah, and I had very high expectations for Galida. Maybe not the same for Bischel, but he's proven a lot of critics, including myself, wrong. He's a solid goaltender. And when you can have, as Darren referred to it, a 1A, 1B, you can't call this a 1-2. It's really a 1-1 situation. You have 2 goaltenders that you can throw in any night. And I'm sure the competition throughout practice has been incredible for Jeff Jackson. And in knowing Jeff and what he likes to see in goaltenders, that's what he wants. He wants guys to compete. But I don't know a Jeff Jackson coach team in recent years that wants to alternate goaltenders down the stretch. He wants to probably ride as number one. Maybe if you get into a situation where somebody's got a little fatigue behind them in the playoffs, you switch off. But I think he wants to ride one. So who will be the number one to step up? This is probably the weekend that somebody gets to prove that.
Number 1, Minnesota State travels to number 14, Michigan Tech. 2 5-1 wins over Bemidji State last weekend for Minnesota State. A win and a tie at Ferris State for Michigan Tech. Minnesota State won the previous 2 meetings between these 2 teams, 2-1 in overtime and a 3-1 win, and that was back in December. Minnesota State just seems like a juggernaut right now.
A bowling ball with bowling pins in its way. That's really what this team is. They get a win this weekend, just won. They're at 30 wins. You don't see a lot of teams these days enter their conference tournament with 30 wins. That's very impressive. Michigan Tech, on the other hand, they're probably looking at this weekend saying, give us 1 win. We need 1 win to solidify our pairwise. They will jump up in the pairwise if they can even get a split, I think, out of this weekend. I haven't done the math, but I think that's probably right. And I do wonder now that Minnesota State has clinched the CCHA, will they lay off anywhere? Will they maybe, I wouldn't say sit anybody, but would they, rest a goaltender? Maybe you give somebody on your first line a night off just to get ready for the playoffs, get ready for the postseason. I don't know that doesn't feel like a Mike Hastings move. He seems like a coach that tends to like to play his ride his horses all the way to the end. So I don't know that that'll happen, but this is not the NFL, but it kind of feels like it once you've clinched this early. Can you maybe give some guys a little rest? Can you, if somebody's been playing with a little bit of an injury, do you say take 2 games off here, take a week off where you don't have to practice, don't have to play? That might be something that Minnesota State's looking at. Does that help Tech in some way? Who knows?
Yeah, you're right about that, and not speaking specifically about Minnesota State. But when the season ends, all of a sudden you see a couple of players who played the whole season getting surgery. There are nagging injuries, and maybe this is the time for the rest. Well, another game out west, another series out west that's just phenomenal, has number 6 Western Michigan at number 7 North Dakota. North Dakota hosting, they come into the weekend having swept Colorado College and Minnesota Duluth, while Western Michigan had a split with Denver last weekend, and the Broncos swept North Dakota at home in late January. But these numbers are interesting to me. Western Michigan is 8 points ahead of Minnesota Duluth in 3rd place, but 7 points behind Denver and 8 behind North Dakota. And still with all that, they're a top 4 team. They're number 4 in the pairwise as we record this. This is just huge for this weekend. I don't think Western Michigan can drop too much in the pairwise, but they can move out of being a top 4 team. And North Dakota really needs to solidify their position for the postseason.
Yeah, listen, if these two, this becomes a North Dakota sweep, they probably reverse in the pairwise. I would say that North Dakota goes into the top 3, 4. Western drops down to 6, 7, maybe even 8. So where you are, where your footing is in the pairwise, listen, both of these teams are in very good NCAA position, but can you solidify things with a sweep this weekend? I think sweeps are hard, especially this time of year. We saw it. I think only 7 out of the top 20 teams in the poll last week swept. So I don't think that it's easy, but should somebody come away with 6 points out of this weekend, particularly if they, everything's in regulation, there's no 5-point, 5-1, 4-2, any of that stuff. I think that this is one of those weekends where you can look at and say it could be made, maybe not in the NCHC, you could see some shifts there, but in the national picture, this could be a game-changing series if either team got 6 points.
Back east, number 18 Cornell travels to number 5 Quinnipiac. Earlier this season, Cornell won 2-1 in overtime back in January before the Big Red went on a 6-game winless streak. And Cornell got off the schneid with a big win, 6-2 at Clarkson on Saturday. Meanwhile, Quinnipiac 2 weeks ago lost 3-1 at Clarkson and 1-0 at Harvard last weekend. The Bobcats are 2-2 in their last 4. Both of them are outside the top 4, obviously. Cornell outside in the pairwise right now, looking to get back in. This seems like it's time for Cornell to turn the corner and time for Quinnipiac to hang on.
Well, listen, if Cornell can't pull out a win here, they're going to have to win the ECAC championship to get into the tournament. There's no doubt there. If they get a win in this game and sweep this weekend, I think that they could actually move themselves up into like that 17, 18 spot in the pairwise and then be in good position to maybe take that next step during the conference tournament. But on the other hand, I think Quinnipiac is just trying to right the ship. And it's not that their ship is sinking at all. This is a very good team that still has the second best winning percentage in the country. But as you mentioned, 2-2 your last 4. They've played some tough opponents. They've had some really tough games. I think of that game against Harvard, they ran into a really hot goaltender who had a fantastic game. They only gave up 1 goal in a weekend series and ended up splitting. That's not the typical weekend in college hockey. But I also look at, Quinnipiac is saying we need confidence, and confidence comes out of wins, not out of splits. So I think that they look at this whole weekend. You have Colgate on the back end of it. We need 6 points. As much as you know that you're in really good position for the NCAA tournament, you want to clinch, and you're in good position to clinch the ECAC title. But I think that they just look at this weekend and saying, this is our 6-point weekend. We have to have 6 this weekend. Cornell's probably saying the same thing, but for very different reasons.
Finally, wrapping up things for the podcast out east, number 19 Connecticut and number 15 Northeastern. It's kind of been a bumpy road over the last month or so for Northeastern. And Connecticut has been surprising a lot of people. This one seems like it could have upset written on it.
And I'm not sure if it's an upset. That's the whole thing. I think that UConn is a really good team and might even be the better team here. But, Northeastern, you have Devin Levi back from the Olympics, and I assume he'll be in net for them. Not to take anything from TJ Septenfelter, who was a great backup that jumped into the number 1 role. But I look at UConn as a team that is so hot, playing really good hockey, and they know what's in front of them, that they could make their first NCAA tournament. And if they were to get this win on Friday, boy, do they put themselves in a better position. There's a lot more hockey left for them. They have still a whole another week left in the regular season. And there's, then you get into the playoffs and there's games to be won there. But I think that UConn is probably, circling this game a little bit as the game that could really push them up the pairwise. Could they get up, from where they are right now at 15? Could they get up to 13, maybe even 12? And then you feel a little more secure. And Mike Kavanaugh, longtime assistant and associate head coach at Boston College, he knows how to read the pairwise. I don't know if he talks to his team about it, but I know that he's aware of it. So he understands the importance of these games this weekend. But I love the UConn story. I would love to see this team become a new NCAA tournament team. Give Hockey East a bid that it probably was not counting on. It probably did not look at UConn as one of its bids this year. Teams are down that aren't supposed to be down in that league. Teams are up that nobody expects. And I think UConn kind of fits into that latter scenario. I'd love to see them make the NCAA tournament.
Not speaking of any specific teams, but I get the idea that coaches talk about standings and pairwise more often than they let on.
I think they do, Ed, and especially to us, we ask the question a lot this time of year, what are you saying to your team? Some coaches very honest, and they say, we're talking about it all the time, because there's a reality that you understand what every game means. But I understand too that coaches don't want to put too much pressure on a student athlete. These are still players that are, at oldest 24, 25, at youngest 18. And, there's some fragile psyches there, and you don't want to put too much pressure. Sometimes it's just good to go out and play the game. And I do believe that some of these coaches understand that, and they get these kids to play the game on a night in, night out basis. And whether that involves talking about standings, whether it involves talking about championships, or just letting them go out and let the results dictate where they go. I love college hockey for that reason, that there is kind of a scenario that's an inner scenario in every coach's head, but how much do you articulate it? That's always a good question.
And the tough thing, and we've talked about this on Mondays with Derek Schooley, is getting everybody to understand the urgency of a game early in the season. Before we hopped on, Darin Pritchett was mentioning that without those losses to RIT and Niagara, Notre Dame would be fifth in the pairwise right now, from what he's been told. Those games may seem insignificant, but they add up at the end of the season.
Oh, coaches know it. Coaches know it. And it doesn't always have to be a loss. I was talking to Norm Bazin a couple of weeks ago, head coach at UMass Lowell, and he recognized the fact that they had two ties. One was against Michigan State, one was against LIU this season. Those, if they missed the tournament, those could be the types of games. They didn't lose them. And I believe they came from behind maybe in both games, or maybe the LIU game, they had the lead, but I can't remember exactly. But, they were in a situation where they didn't lose games, but those could be the two ties that kind of cost them an NCAA bid if they're right on the bubble. That's how fragile it can be when you look at your non-conference schedule.
Well, it could be percentage points in the pairwise that determine the field, and some of those percentage points may be decided with the games we've talked about on this podcast, which has been brought to you by DCU Digital Federal Credit Union. What will DCU mean to you? Find out today by visiting dcu.org. Membership required. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Game of the Week podcast, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.